It is a great pleasure to be with you today. I will be your host for our webinar on the trending topic of the myths and facts of Mexican nearshoring. So we hope you have your coffee for those who are joining in from the Pacific Standard Time. And for those who are in their day already, well, you're probably on your second. But we're very happy that you were able to join us, and we do want to hear from you. So please feel free to share your role, industry, and location here at our chat. And feel free also that throughout our webinar, if you have any questions or would like to add on to our conversation, either to use the chat or the Q&A function that we have here in our platform. So before we start, we would love to thank our collaborators today as our guest speaker, Antonio Ochoa. He will be joining us from Deloitte, and also a big part of this collaboration was Tijuana EDC. So thank you again for making this possible for us. And also our sponsor, G Global, which is a 3PL and fulfillment solution provider that has helped businesses leverage their revenue growth using cross-border logistics across the American and Mexican border. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our nearshoring experts of today. Good morning, Antonio. Can you hear us?
Hi, Cassandra. Yes, I can hear you well. Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Thank you so much for your confirmation. Antonio is going to share with us his more than 20 years of experience in global economy. Additionally, he has the economic and financial outlook in Mexican transfer pricing regulations. Antonio, can you give us a little bit of more perspective of how you help companies with this expertise?
Yes, of course, Cassandra, happy to do that. Yeah, in particular in Mexico and actually in all OECD countries, there's a specific regulation for intercompany transactions. So whenever there's a transaction among related parties, meaning those companies that have equity or administrative or control in common, then those will be subject to TP rules, in particular to the demonstration that the transaction were established at market prices. So that's my general background on transfer pricing, and we're assisting the clients in that specific matter.
Well, thank you very much for being here and helping us understand the trend of nearshoring from this global perspective. Antonio also provides evaluation services for specific tax strategies, the fundamental for the compliance and growth of a business. And also, he helps them benefit from evaluating prospective purchase sales of each business, additional to the different industrial benchmarks to be able to introduce them in a projected market. Now, on the other side, we have Eddie Estrada. Good morning, Eddie. Can you hear us?
Good morning. I can hear everyone just fine. Hi, Cass.
Excellent. It's great to see you again. Eddie is going to share with us also 20 years of experience in the e-commerce, supply chain, and logistics sectors, additional to the standard execution that he has in sales and growth. So his core strength is identifying new opportunities to be able to forge strategic partnerships and navigating complex business landscapes. And in this particular situation, we'll be diving into, of course, nearshoring. And he has an international trade experience as he's worked in China, South America, the United States, and currently he has 3 years into helping expand the nearshoring explosion here in Mexico, and is currently our VP of Revenue Growth at G Global. So again, thank you so much, Eddie. So now, thank you. Now we would love to dive into, well, there's a lot of speculation if nearshoring is a buzzword or not, but truth is there are a lot of expectations to be met. And to be able to break this down, Antonio has helped us identify 3 different aspects of it. And in this case, logistics and technology, economic factors, and jobs. So Antonio, we're all ears.
Antonio, I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
Oh, thank you very much for that.
Thanks,
Yeah,
sir.
I was sharing with you that there are many many expectations around the nearshoring. However, we highlighted these three relevant topics. I guess that it would be a good starting point. And let me elaborate a little bit on them because we consider as a firm they are very relevant for this for this nearshoring issue. In particular with the logistics and technology, definitely, as you know, the US has for several years become a relevant trading partner, a strategic alliance that we have since more than 20 years. So definitely this will benefit the partnership that we have with the States in order to enhance the relationship and also including Canada because of the trade agreement. So definitely it will be a good opportunity to continue with that aspect. Also, we are expecting an increase in exports in Mexico. Let me put it with some numbers. Roughly, we can observe that in year 22, the total exports of Mexico were a little bit more of $500 billion. So we're expecting on top of that to have an increase in $50 billion if all expectations are met and and all the projects are established as planned in Mexico. So that's a relevant number in terms of how the potential of exports can be increased. Also, because of this type of relationship in the business, we're also expecting a new entry of new technologies into the Mexican market. No, as you know, we are very knowledgeable of procedures of engineering matters and some research and development activities, but definitely because of this new tendency of new technologies, AI and some electric mobility issues, we should be expecting as well that this will increase accordingly. In the economic part, definitely a boost in the R&D and productivity factors will be relevant. Not only the usual assembly that we have in several of our industries, but of moving into more high-tech activities is something that also we can expect. In terms of foreign investment, we're expecting an increase of foreign indirect investment. We're expecting a $60 billion yearly investment. Please observe that the yearly average number that we have in Mexico is around 30 to 35 billion. So we in this period of following 2 to 3 years, there should be a relevant amount of increase in foreign direct investment. The manufacturing production, we are expecting the contribution to add around 2% additional to GDP. And it's not casual that in this year, the forecast for the GDP in Mexico started in January around 1%. Some of the specialists said 2%, but because of part of this nearshoring effect, the expectations are moving to a 3%. So if at this point we are observing this change in expectations, we are expecting as well that in the near future, these 2 or 3 years, the GDP will grow additionally in this expected percentage. And finally, the addition of 1.1 million jobs is a rough estimate that we have in the firm. So definitely because of these new investments, direct employees, direct professionals involved in the process, and all the collateral services that these new investments will require, it will trigger a relevant opportunity in terms of jobs.
Thank you so much for that insight, Antonio. And although it's debatable if Mexican nearshoring is a new concept or not, we do want to bring to the table the following data. According to a survey from Mexico's central bank, we can confirm that nearshoring is starting to materialize. And this survey was made to companies that have observed that their foreign direct investment has increased, but it is divided into three: the national, by industry, and by export status. So Antonio, can you help us interpret what we're seeing right here?
Yes, Cass, of course. It is very interesting data. As you said, the survey from Central Bank in Mexico established the following question. They say in July 22, and the reference or the question that they were requesting from different entrepreneurs in Mexico, the question was during the last 12 months, indicate whether your company production, sales, or investment have increased as a result of nearshoring. So as you can see, the general answer on an average is 16%, which is not a bad number. It's actually a very good starting point. This phenomenon is not new, as you said, and we're keeping track on the expectations and the results. So factually, 16% of them are saying that these sales and new investments are because of nearshoring. And by industry and by status, the number becomes a little bit different, but still becoming relevant. By industry in terms of global chains, which is a relevant part of the process, 26%, the manufacturing, several answers establish an 80% attributable to the nearshoring, and the non-manufacturing 11%, while the export status for export-oriented companies, 24% said that their activity is linked to nearshoring, and non-export to 16%. So in general terms, the issue is here. The opportunity is knocking at the door. So definitely it's a very good news that this is becoming effective and that is triggering some initial good benefits for the country.
Thank you, Antonio. So this is our present, but it's also important to look back into our past. And for that, excuse me about that. And for that, let's look into a very important period or pinpoint how the pandemic also influenced. So we have two charts here, the total annual foreign direct investment and by the division of type of investment. Now, Antonio, can you help us understand where the breakoff is?
Sure. Yeah, as you can see in the left graph, the foreign direct investment in $1 billion. As I said previously, the average goes from 30 to 35 every year. As Cass correctly highlighted, 2020 we observed a relevant decrease because of the pandemic. However, there is a relevant recovery of investment, and in particular, 22 reached a new high of $36 billion for foreign direct investment in Mexico. And let me make a pause there, because if we move to the graph on the right and we observe to the green column in year 2022, we can observe that the light yellow, light green refers to new investments. The medium green is reinvestments, and the dark green is the parent company accounts. So in terms of this accounting, you can observe that the new investment jumped from 21 to 22 to 18% of those $36 billion that arrived into Mexico. So again, this is another relevant fact that the investment is moving to Mexico. It's becoming more relevant, more interesting for doing business and for this nearshoring strategy. And fortunately, the data that we're keeping track of are confirming this situation.
Awesome. And I think also looking at from a global perspective will definitely shine light to where this movement and where these sources of investment are really coming from. And we do have the following chart where it shows us the position according to country and their investment. And of course, United States being an important partner of Mexico is at number one. And we do have Canada, Argentina, Japan, UK, Korea, Hong Kong, France, and China. Yet it's important to emphasize why three of these countries are highlighted and do not correlate to their position. So Antonio, can you give us a little bit of insight of why this chart in the map is highlighted the following way?
Yes, Cass, the intention here was to obviously to represent it with the table the relevant investment that is coming into Mexico. As you correctly said, the United States has been always the most relevant trading partner. However, we wanted to highlight the case of China and Hong Kong because of some latest evidence that we have gathered and also some confirmation from a specific study from BBVA Bank in Mexico, together with the Industrial Park Association in Mexico. They identify that the expectation they also are realizing is that more than 400 new companies will be expected to jump into the Mexican market. But however, from those companies, the expectation is that an average of 30%, 20% of them will be from Chinese investment. So currently, as you observe in the table, the Chinese investment is not that relevant. However, because of the supply chain and the issues with all the planning of the project, and because of general term, the logistics and the supply, the Chinese are relevant trading partner for manufacturing process in the United States. So it becomes relevant to also make a focus on how they are going to make their business decision and move into Mexico. Actually, in the firm, we already have some projects with Chinese investors that are interested in taking advantage of this opportunity. So we find convenient to let know the audience of this situation so they can be aware and keep track of this path.
And also, one of the objectives is to fight the risk of disruptions in the supply chain. And knowing that these kinds of disruptions can take up to 6 to 12 months to normalize, this trend is getting traction. Nearshoring is becoming more and more popular. So all the data we've seen till now is, of course, companies and brands that already have decided to make the move. But there are some companies or businesses that still haven't decided, are not fully convinced, or are facing myths or misconceptions that, retracts them from seeing as Mexico as a strategic options to settle their operations. And that's what we're going to dive into right now. And for that, we would love to hear from Eddie and to be able to understand the first two myths. So Eddie, we're all ears.
Hi, Kaz. So thank you for giving me the space again, Kaz. We're going to talk about some misconceptions that people that are new to the concept of nearshoring, or people that are hearing the words nearshoring a lot now, may not be privy to, or may have some inconsistencies with information that's going around. Right. In addition to nearshoring, e-commerce, cross-border fulfillment seems to be big words that are aligning into the sector today. And with people moving their supply chains from China into nearshoring, those are things that have to happen, right? I would say the number one conception is security, right? Lack of visibility. There's been a big, tremendous movement in the last 5 years in all of Mexico, not just necessarily in supply chain, that has technology accelerating at a tremendous pace, right? There's there's a big fintech boom happening right now in Mexico City, specifically around technology. And then technology and warehouse automation, warehouse systems is catching up extremely fast. There's a lot of talented developers, a lot of talented engineers that are on the ground now, and they were brought over by companies like Mercado Libre, companies like Amazon that moved into the sector before, and that creates a very strong pool of talent and a very strong pool of engineers that merge together with the best practices from those, Fortune 5 companies, and cascade it down, to the masses, right? So right now you're not only seeing small startups, medium-sized startups, but you're starting to see larger companies like Maersk putting up facilities of 250,000 square feet in Tijuana, specifically to capitalize on nearshoring, cross-border fulfillment, and not only the traditional business model of maquiladora, which is, manufacturing or assembling the end of goods and then moving it into the United States. When we talk about security, there's been big advantages, right? Certifications are a big thing. For people that are going to explore nearshoring, definitely making sure that the partner that you select is CTPAT certified, it's ISO certified, is OAS certified, which are anti-corruption certifications. That needs to be very important, right? You do have, some companies, some maquiladoras that are still working with individual owner operators, but I would say the security is vamping up from an operational perspective with those certifications. Laredo is launching a tremendous movement to make cross-border transportation faster even than it is today. Mexicali as well. They're looking at how to make the injection into the United States a lot faster as well. Um, Visibility into your supply chain. We've had a lot of disruptors that entered the space in the U.S. 10 years ago. Like the Flexports of the world. There's very big companies that have the same technical capabilities now, and like Nuvo Cargo, right? Nuvo Cargo is a big player in Mexico cross-border customs, and there's a lot of automation and tremendous amount of data that's going through those portals as well. So the making sure that the visibility is there, making sure that you have eyes of where your inventory is, real-time inventories, and definitely understanding how that affects your end customer experience. That seems to be the top of mind, right? At the end of the day, most companies are looking for results. They're not looking to have to readjust their customer experience or readjust their operational cues, right? And then the second biggest myth is that customs compliance um, doesn't provide advantages. I mean, there's a very tremendous amount of validity that you need compliance in order to maintain relevancy, right? The customs brokerage landscape is extremely complicated on the Mexico side. You know, multiple times versus what it is in the United States. You have patents, you have pedimentos, you have pre-pedimentos, and for a long time, those have been the barriers to really making this grow. That it's been a very arduous manual process, and part of the technology that I explained before is automating all of that information, right? If you were to tell customers today that an order can pick, pack, and ship and be injected into a carrier and crossing the border from Mexico into the U.S. within 24 to 36 hours. That's a stat that people, even to today, they want to validate and see if it can really happen. But the technology is already there. Um, Compliance is very important because in order to maintain and to be able to deliver those velocities of injection and cross-border activity, the compliance from information and data which is stored in an IMEX, reconciled with US customs, reconciled with Mexico customs, making sure that your inventory is up to date, making sure your product is classified correctly, which is much more difficult to classify goods in Mexico than it is in the United States. A fun fact is that if a woman's pair of leggings is below a certain amount of static circumference, it's classified as a child's garment. It's not classified as a woman's garment. So those are the complexities that are very important. That if you are exploring the solution, whether it is to do it yourself or do it with a third party, you have to make sure that the partner that you're selecting is an expert in all of those nuances to maintain compliance and efficiency in your supply chain.
Thank you very much, Eddie,
Yeah.
for helping us understand the importance of understanding what security and visibility will mean for Mexican nearshoring, and also how customs compliance is not just a need, but it can become a strategic advantage for your business. Now, another misconception we have is that Mexican nearshoring is only ideal for simple or small projects. And therefore, it's because it's more expensive than be able to offshore in Asia. So, Antonio, can you give us insight on these 2 points, please?
Sure, Cass, and yes, those in line with Eddie's comments, those are other two relevant myths that we have to erase from the investor's mind because actually, with the expertise that we have developed in different industries, let me make an example with the medical devices, with automotive industry, we have demonstrated that Mexico can handle relevant projects, complex projects. We have, for example, the latest case in the news with Tesla. Just, I guess that is a good refresh to let know that not only assembling activities, but also in charge of having the quality labor required and the expertise in different levels. We are in track of dealing with relevant complex projects as well. And also this idea that Asia would be a more not that expensive in comparison with Mexico or other Latin American countries, that will also be a myth. There are some regions in Asia, in China, where the match among salaries is not that relevant. But maybe here the focus is that the decision for the nearshoring, it actually does not depend now on the cost. Obviously, it is one of the variables, but it depends on the planning project and actually to be close to the final market, which is the most relevant part. But anyway, please consider that also Mexico can grant relevant opportunities and several type of benefits from a custom perspective, as Eddie and Cass were saying, and also tax benefits. I guess that by making all the plus and the numbers, the net effect will be very competitive for companies to settle down in Mexico.
Thank you, Antonio. That was very insightful. And to be able to see it in a tangible example, let's move on here with a cost breakdown. And Eddie is going to walk us through each of these costs and the concepts that we have here to see how we can make this exercise like a real comparison. And of course, understand why it's important to make a run through to understand if you can benefit from revenue growth and if in this case Latin America or Mexico will be a viable option.
Hey, Cass, thanks. So everyone, we took an example here from a Harvard Business Review business case. We will be citing it when we share the presentation. And the case breaks down line item cost variables by skill or level of employee, right? So they're speaking to an hourly developer rate or a programmer. As you can see here, it's Mexico is catching up to the United States, and the cost for a programmer is increasing tremendously high versus what's in available in Asia today, which is one of the primary reasons why if you hire an integrator or if you hire an implementation firm that does technology solutions, 9 times out of 10 they're going to India or they're offshoring a good portion of the project for obvious reasons, right? So in Mexico, because we are having that tremendous talent in programmers and developers, the cost for that specific role is higher in Mexico, right? Project management, though, project management is one of the biggest skills that you can immediately find anywhere across the border between the U.S. and Mexico. For example, in Tijuana, a lot of Maquiladora, Samsung, Foxconn has been there for a long time. So project management, implementations, there's a very large pool, thus bringing the cost of that role versus what it would cost in Asia, right? Travel expenses is another big part, right? So you're not bringing ocean containers across the border. You're not paying for air freight. You're not paying for international shipping costs, even if it's down to a parcel level. You're literally just driving a truck across the border. Thus, the injection and the customer experience is improved dramatically because you can get products injected and shipped out within 24 to 36 hours, like I mentioned before, in a direct to consumer environment where it's e-commerce. And if you have wholesale orders going to a distributor, they can have the same effect, right? You're not paying on an air freight, or you're not paying on an ocean freight on a per PO basis, right? So one of the biggest misconceptions that we want to make sure that everyone walks away from is, most of the times, people, when we tend to look at analysis and look at data, we like to break down into the weeds and look at what is the cost per line item. But I think what we want to summarize here is, in the total cost breakdowns, is it's always good to evaluate what is the total cost per whatever metric you establish. For a clothing brand, it's cost per unit of sales, right? Cost per unit, and increasing revenue and profitability per garment, per unit, per order, whatever metric you look at in your firm, right? For people that are looking to manufacture, it's the same exercise, right? And you can get into the details of, what is the revenue per full-time equivalent, what is the revenue per square foot of an operation ran in the Western US, Midwest, East Coast, versus what it would happen in Mexico, right? The Another notion is, you have a lot of manufacturers, right, that are looking at sustainability. They're looking at how to diversify their manufacturing portfolio from China into other countries, right? Mexico could be a segue for all of Mexico, where the experience of manufacturing is not far from from China, right? Like Antonio mentioned, and I would like to reiterate, some of our customers at G Global are world-renowned medical device brands, right? So manufacturing medical devices that are used for, human applications, um, are being done today. So manufacturing shoes is a very big hub of shoe manufacturing in areas of Mexico that specialize in leatherware and footwear. Apparel has been being done here for a long time. Probably the last sector that is requires that last little bit of help to be on par with China is the high tech manufacturing, right? Very specialized in medical, but the problem is not talent. The problem is capacity, right? Having enough factories and enough maquilas that have the tooling, that have the PVC and plastic mold injection equipment. That's the challenge that's going to happen here. Is whoever doesn't arrive early will not will have to wait in line, pretty much. We see a lot of, Chinese manufacturers, Chinese brands. They're already arriving in Mexico, preparing and anticipating that's change in a nearshoring effect that's likely to happen within the next 36 months to 5 years out. For sure, it's going to be very diversified.
Thank you, Eddie. And again, everyone, thank you so much for sharing your participation in our Q&A section. We will be responding to them right at the end of the webinar. We still have a lot of stuff to share with you. For example, and a very important part, I think, of this webinar is to share a success story of nearshoring. So feel free, we'll be receiving your comments and continuing our conversation of your specific points at this Q&A section. But thank you again. Now, let's look of what we can achieve with Mexican nearshoring with the right orientation, making sure we make the right analysis, and where we can take, in this case, your business for it. And Eddie, can you share with us the breakdown and the different phases this particular brand went through?
Absolutely, Kaz. So this is a real-time example of a brand that at G Global we help make a full transition to process all of their cross-border fulfillment from Mexico, right? So the highlights are, it's a $500 million top line revenue company, and it's a main staple brand for in the United States. Again, it's a U.S. brand, an American company, and they were operating in the United States. They were bi-coastal. They had multiple distribution departments. Um, and number one, when we started exploring Mexico and exploring the ideas of what the benefits were and what were the points and financial benefits to be gained from doing the transition into Mexico, a big part of the discussion was there's not an opportunity to turn off the business lights off and lights on, because you would have 30 to 45 days or 2 to 3 month window where people wouldn't be able to buy or purchase. And that's definitely not an option, right? For most brands, and significantly more important for a brand of this caliber, right? So what the company did is we supported them with a phased approach, right? And that phased approach turned into, why don't we either fulfill West Coast business? Why don't we fill specific SKUs from the overall scope of brand of products that they have? And that does two things, right? It allows them to evaluate the proof of concept. It allows them to have business continuity without having to disrupt the customer experience, or and really analyze the financials and the metrics, and have predictive information to make assumptions of, if we were to go 100% by X date, these are the revenue projections or points that we would be increasing as margin on a per unit basis, or adding to their bottom line, or any way that they wanted to review the information. So we supported this brand with a lot of coaching around the regulations of Mexico labor laws, right? How do we overcome the challenges that they were having today, which quite frankly at that time, which was about 2 years ago, the biggest challenge was finding labor in the US, right? Even getting people to process orders or do work in the warehouse, even with bonuses being paid out, that was a big challenge for this brand, right? Because during peak season, during scale, and those are all the worrisome things that they were facing at that time. So again, immediate labor force available in Tijuana. It's already skilled in handling garments and handling product. So just reapplying those skills into an order processing environment is not that big of a challenge. So we supported them in doing a waved approach of X amount of SKUs into a 50,000 square foot operation, and immediately within the first 8 months, they saw a tremendous amount of improvement on their margins and their bottom line, and that led to the brand opting to transition a full 400,000 square foot operation, and all of their products under four brands. They transitioned everything, and we've gone through a mutual partnership where we provide all of the know-how, the customs compliance portion, the security and operational excellence portion, and making sure that their customer experience is not hindered in any way, shape, or form, by meeting the same KPIs or similar KPIs to what they were achieving within an in-house operation in the United States, right? So I would say that's a big success case, and a proven concept that the if you're running an operation in-house, the marginal savings just on capital expenditures and operational expenses is dramatically high. If you're working with a third party provider outsourcing, depending on where you are in the country, the savings are maybe a little bit less points, but you're still going to see dramatic amounts of savings. And then the duty savings, or the 321, which is the duty free participation. I know there's a lot of discussion, right, about it going away. It's going to be hindered. It's going there's lobbying happening against it. But the fact of the matter is that 321, we don't foresee it going away. We seeing it, if it's going to be a modification to it, it's going to be changed. Maybe it won't be 800, maybe it would be 500. And where do those assumptions come from, right? um, I mean, Amazon is the biggest user of 321. They bring in millions of packages every week, right? So the infrastructure that would need to be built out by Customs and Border Patrol is just monumental, right? A tremendous amount of automation, a tremendous amount of more headcount in order to audit and review every single piece that comes into the United States. I think it would be counterproductive, or if that were to happen, it's a 5-10 year project. It's not something that would happen immediately right away. Those are our assumptions, and based on the feet on the ground and close conversations that we have as being members of the U.S. brokerage consensus, and what we hear from Mexico as well. Those are our assumptions, but just wanted to take the time and share the results of a successful business case, and what are the opportunities to be had, right? And this is only for cross-border fulfillment, right? Basically e-commerce, direct to consumer. If you were to add manufacturing on the Mexico side, the savings are incremental from that point, because you wouldn't need to buy it from any other country. You're manufacturing and you're trucking it maybe a couple of hours away to your distribution center, and it provides a full end-to-end solution. So that's the success case, Cass.
Thank you very much. Well, piggybacking on that idea, we've seen like the traditional model, or the attraction is specifically, as you mentioned, an attraction for sectors as manufacturing. But we have a new big player coming in, taking advantage of these programs like Section 321, and e-commerce is booming. It's just growing at an exponential rate. And for that, as Greg in our comments mentioned, perception is very important. So in this survey, I think it reflects perfectly why Mexico is so attractive. What's the perception from the companies to actually make the move? And what are these competitive advantages that convince them that they can obtain the same results or even more? So Antonio, can you help us emphasize what we can take away from this survey?
Yes, Cass, of course. This graph that you observed is a result of also a survey that the central bank made to foreign investors. Very interesting one. It was dated also back in 22. And here the question was, in particular, in your opinion, how would you rate the importance of the following factors in Mexico in making it a more competitive destination for international companies? So as you can observe, 98% of them established that the nearness, how close we are to the US market is definitely the most relevant situation why the investor is deciding to move into Mexico. And obviously, as you correctly stated before, to take advantage of this proximity and the supply chain become or make it more flexible in terms of transition, and trying to avoid other type of logistic problems, which is very relevant. And actually, as you all know, this pandemic just evidenced the hard situation that several suppliers had with China not fulfilling completely the shipments, and having relevant troubles in sending all the inventory in the time and with the amount that it was required by several US companies. So definitely this is the first key decisions for them to make the move. The second one and the third one is related to labor. Salaries, of course, is a factor, but also the qualified labor force that we just discussed previously. The fact that we also have a relevant experience, as we have been said previously, on different sectors. And then the three last ones is infrastructure, tax structure, which is also relevant, and the rule of law. So this is a confirmation of why companies are taking this type of decisions. Definitely is not easy, as Eddie is also shared with us. There are some challenges there in several areas. However, maybe here also a relevant part is to have the strategic partner, as Eddie said, a strategic partner that is well known in the law, well known in the logistics, well known in all the relevant factors. So the guidance can be correctly applied, and the investment can be correctly and reliably be settled down in Mexico.
Thank you, Antonio. And continue with that part that you just mentioned. We do understand there's a certain attractiveness, but we have to recognize the current obstacles that may will just make a nearshoring maybe not as attainable for others. So we identified two. Can you help us understanding what they actually mean for growth?
Yes, these are just some of the examples. I have to say that, unfortunately, from an administrative point of view, there are several permits administrative burden has to be to consider. Obviously, maybe the relevant initial part from a custom perspective will be not only the planning, but getting the EMEX program, which is, as you know, a program that really provides great benefits from a custom perspective and also from a tax perspective. So it takes time to take the process in dealing with those tramits to get the permits right. So you have to be very aware of this situation in order to see which is the best path that you have to follow in order to concrete the project. Also, we're saying this represent an obstacle for 28% approximately of organization in achieving their business objectives. However, it's still a challenge, but in our experience, it's a matter of, as I said previously, to make the correct decision on your expert that is going to guide you. And now here with G Global and Deloitte, obviously we are happy to guide you through the process. But we have having several success stories, as Eddie highlighted one of them. In both of our firms, we have been assisting several investors in dealing with this additional compliance. So it's just a matter of make a good planning and then set a work plan in order to move on with the project.
Sorry, guys, I was on mute. Another challenge that there is site selection. You had mentioned previously that the real estate is a very tight market right now. It's very demanded, and also those who are building and growing, they're already sold. So where can businesses get also help with locating the talent and resources to be able to grow once they make the move, Antonio?
Yes, it's a very good point, Cass, because the land and the industrial facilities are really scarce in our market now because of high demand. We know that several companies in real estate are making relevant investments in order to try to move as fast as possible in generating new spaces. However, yes, as part of the deal, it will be important also to get in more anticipation as possible the relevant contacts and guidance on this site selection, so you can make relevant progress here because otherwise you will be just forced to sell down your investment where available spaces are, and maybe not in a strategic way as you will be requiring to. So this is what is happening now. It's also confirmation that the investment is moving in a relevant way in Mexico. So yes, to keep track on this and be ahead as much as possible in order to make a timely decision.
Thank you. So moving on, we do want to emphasize why market analysis is essential, as Antonio has shared with us. There's a lot of administrative requirements that will also define how challenging nearshoring will be. But we want to make sure that you have the important takeaways to understanding how harnessing nearshoring can definitely be that stepping stone to global growth without the supply chain disruptions that we have been witnesses of the last few years. So emphasizing that it's important to seize the opportunity with the right data, the right partners, the right strategy. We would love to hear our concluding comments from our experts. So Eddie, what would you suggest that companies should remember of what we've seen throughout this webinar?
The important takeaways, Kaz, is nearshoring is here to stay. the growth of e-commerce and cross-border fulfillment. It's not a new concept, but it's gaining traction extremely fast for the obvious financial benefits. And number two is beginning to get engaged and trying to identify how it can be taken advantage of, or how it can be utilized to have an impact on each respective organization. I would say those are the three biggest recommendations that I would make. That those are initiatives that needs to be a proactive action from the participants on the call here. I would say as a secondary is make sure and connect with the resources, right? Connect with the resources in your network to understand better the landscape of nearshoring and visit. I would say the biggest misconception is that the technology is not there, but I don't think they can support. um, Security and safety is always going to be prevalent in any country that you go to, but I would say coming to visit, really having your feet on the ground, looking at all the other companies that are taking advantage of what's happening, right? So Living Spaces is in Tijuana, Samsung is in Tijuana, Foxconn is in Tijuana. Um, a tremendous amount of number of medical device companies that are staple name in the United States. They all have factories. They all have opportunities that they're taking advantage of, and they have been for a long time, right? I think what you're seeing now is what has traditionally been a maquiladora style of business, that you have to do some assembly and manufacturing. That's been scaled down, and there's never been a bigger opportunity for small to medium-sized companies to take advantage of nearshoring through partnerships, through established service providers that are focusing specifically on that, right? Whether it is that you're going to a maquiladora that can help you set up some light assembly, some embroidery, some stamping, a lot of things that are applicable to the retail sector. And then as far stretched out as fulfillment, like I mentioned, all of the big companies, all of the top 10 logistics companies in the world, everyone is banking on Mexico, and all of them are establishing e-commerce fulfillment centers or some type of a cross-border solution to capitalize on it. So I would say my biggest recommendation from everyone, from all the information got here, is check it for yourself, get involved, check it for yourself, validate it, come visit. And I think they're gonna be pleasantly surprised at what they see when they make that step.
Thank you, Eddie. And we would love to extend the invitation in our case at G Global. If you would like to see it firsthand, our doors are open. Feel free to contact us or through any of our social media channels. And also, Antonio, please help us emphasizing as your role as an economic and financial consultant, what is so important to know concerning Mexican nearshoring?
Yes, Cass, as Eddie says, and we have been saying all the webinar, it's a great opportunity. We also have, as I said, keeping track on the numbers and visualize relevant projects that are coming to Mexico. But just keep in mind that Mexico, as other countries, have several type of obligations from a legal perspective, customs perspective, etc. So issues like control beneficiary, money anti-laundry law, the labor part, which recently changed, and now the union part is becoming relevant because of the trade agreement with the US and Canada, the IMEX requirement, the customs and tax issues. So it's not that easy at the beginning, but with the correct guidance, definitely it's just a matter of making a good work plan, a checklist that you can rely on, and from there make a move. Definitely, this trend is coming to stay, and the investors that take the opportunity first are going to take relevant advantage from the others. So just make the analysis, start making the numbers, and then make the best decision for your business in Mexico.
Thank you, Antonio. So let's dive into our favorite part, our Q&A section. And to start off, Greg shares with us the following question. What's the state of an all-rail transportation corridor from Mexico to the Western US? Eddie, can you help us with this question?
Absolutely. So I think that's very good intel, Greg. I think two of the U.S.'s largest rail companies, CSX, and I believe the second one is CPKC, I believe. They've agreed to acquire and start to build out a rail corridor that goes from Mexico, I believe, directly into their connections right through Alabama and Canada, I believe. I don't think there's a tentative date of when that will go live, but subsequent to that, the CBP and Mexico and the state of Texas are building right now an express highway that's going to allow for immediate injection of commercial grade transportation equipment, full truckloads. And the goal is to have the trucks cross the border within 25 minutes. I believe that project is well underway as well. There's no definitive date of when it will be live, but those are just infrastructure investments that, the largest rail companies in the United States and the state of Texas and Mexico themselves, they're looking to lobby and push ahead because they're just anticipating for the infrastructural need that's coming with this wave, right? And if the two largest rail lines are partnering up to invest, that's not a light investment, right? So to align with Antonio's points about, the financial analysis, is it going to be a hit or not? I think that should begin to answer a lot of questions that if infrastructure is going into place is because everyone is anticipating an increased amount of flow of goods between the two countries.
Thank you, Eddie. Antonio, please let me know if you would like to add any other comments.
No, in line with Eddie, we also aware that this project is moving on. Not certain on the day of compliance, but definitely will be a relevant project to keep track.
Awesome, thank you. Now, Greg also mentioned that another myth that needs to be addressed is the level of exposure to crime and theft. And that's when the topic we also spoke about security and visibility, why they come hand in hand. And this concern is associated with transport of the goods from Mexico to the US. So he also mentioned that he's not sure how accurate this perception is, but it's out there. And of course, perception is very important. Eddie, would you like to add on to this comment?
Absolutely. So those are great points, Greg. I love your questions. Um, uh, Perception is more important than that, right? Perception is reality. Everyone's perception of how they see things or what they assume is where they anchor their part of their decision making, right? A lot of change is a scary part in itself, and then evaluating to do change in a country that's has a perception of a high crime rate. It is a big issue, right? I think from G Global's perspective, which is where I can speak from of, is we inject into the United States 30 to 50,000 packages a day, and knock on wood, we've never had an incident of a truck having any theft or anything of that nature, right? Again, I think those perceptions, the best way to overcome them is to make a field trip, right? Make a field trip. Once you look at all the commercial trade that is happening between Tijuana, for example, which is perceived as one of the most dangerous parts of Mexico. Once you see all the commercial trade, all of the brands, all of our facilities, which is a total of 7 facilities, two on the Otay Mesa border. We've never had any challenges with theft or a truck going missing. Again, very important, right? Selecting the correct partner and making the assessment of if you're going to do it yourself or if you're going to partner up with someone else. That's all part of the evaluation process, right? Again, speaking for ourselves, that's why we're very big on CTPAT, OEA, and ISO certifications. which allows us to participate in all of the anti-corruption activities, right? So we're committed to compliance, and we're committed to excellence and safety for the product of our customers, for our employees. And we have 1,600 employees, right? We have 1,600 employees on the Tijuana side. And we've been very fortunate that we've yet to see an incident happen. Not to say that it does not happen, but I think what people will see, Greg, is and maybe you'll agree with me that if people come to visit, they see all the commerce that's happening, and if they're there for the right reasons, the likelihood of something bad happening diminishes greatly.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Now, let's look into another question. And for that, we would like to have Antonio's answer. How is the power infrastructure in TJ and other California bordering areas of Mexico? You had mentioned it's important in site selection to confirm that we have the right resources in the area for successful nearshoring operations.
Yes, Cass. Yes, I agree. The power part is very relevant in order to complete the decision of investment. What we have been tracking down in our experience is that in relation with these developers of real estate infrastructure, actually in companies located in the border of Mexico, not only they are taking care of getting new land and new industrial facilities, but also making the complete package in order to include energy sources, reliable energy sources, and clean energy sources. Um, Fortunately, in many parts of Mexico, here in Baja California, the clean energy is also a good option, a good trend that we have been observing. The relevant investor in clean energy with natural gas and eolic power and sun power is Sempra through its subsidiaries in Mexico. And actually, several industrial parks are being fueled by this type of energy sources. So definitely, we are very aware of this situation. And as I say, it would be just a matter of making the good plan, the particular needs of the investment, the relevant amount of gigas that the investment is going to need, and from there, see which is the best site locations in order to get certainty that this power issue is becoming a help and not a problem.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Well, there are more questions, but sadly we are out of time. But we would love to continue our conversation and therefore invite everyone to check out both G Global and Deloitte's website. And particularly our invitation is according to claim savings, according to a nearshoring strategy that will be tailored to your business growth. So please feel free. We will try to make sure to answer all your questions once we receive. And we want to thank you also for your participation, being part of this conversation. And as we see, there's a lot of promising growth yet to be experienced together. So the world is our playground. We thank you again. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Antonio Ochoa. We thank you, Deloitte, Tijuana DC for making this possible, and Eddie Estrada for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a great day, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.